She didn't ask if he believed her. She just leaned closer, her voice low like a confession. Your wife slept with my husband. A long silence followed, not from shock, but because Mark already knew. But what made him freeze was the next sentence, let's take revenge. Together. The bar was designed to impress without trying too hard. Dark walnut panels, low amber lighting, conversations that stayed just above a murmur as if everyone inside had something to protect or something to lose. Mark Sullivan sat alone at the far end, a glass of bourbon untouched in his hand. He wasn't there to drink. He was there because routine had become a form of camouflage. Every Thursday. Thursday. Same time, same seat. It made him predictable. And predictability, he had learned, made people careless. His phone buzzed once on the table. A message preview flashed briefly, then disappeared. No name, no notification history. Clara had started doing that 3 weeks ago. He didn't check the phone. He didn't need to. Instead, he watched the reflection of the bar mirror in front of him. That's when he saw her. She didn't belong to the room, not because she stood out, but because she moved like she owned silence itself. Tall, composed. Her black dress wasn't loud, but it held attention the way a well-placed argument does, quiet but undeniable. She walked straight toward him, not hesitant, not curious, certain. Mark Sullivan, she said, her voice low, controlled. He didn't turn immediately. He took a slow sip of bourbon, then set the glass down with deliberate precision. Yes. She slid onto the stool beside him without asking. Up close, she was even more striking. Not just beautiful, intentional. Every detail of her presence felt chosen. I won't waste your time, she said. Mark finally turned to look at her. Her eyes didn't flinch. Then don't. A faint smile touched her lips. Not warm, not cold. Just knowing. Your wife, she said softly. Leaning closer, slept with my husband. The words didn't echo. They landed and disappeared into the quiet. Mark didn't react. No tightening of the jaw, no flicker of surprise, just stillness. She studied him, clearly expecting something, shock denial, anger. Instead, she got nothing. You don't seem surprised, she said. I'm not, Mark replied. That caught her off guard. A pause, small but real. Then you knew, she said. Mark turned back toward his drink. I suspected, he corrected. Knowing requires proof. She let out a slow breath, as if recalibrating her approach. Then let me help you with that. From her purse, she pulled out her phone. A few taps, then she slid it across the bar toward him. Photos. Clara. Laughing. Clara. Leaning too close. Clara. With a man Mark recognized instantly. Daniel Hayes, his business partner. Mark didn't touch the phone right away. He simply looked, measured, precise. How long, he asked? 6 months, she said. Maybe more. And you're sure? Her eyes hardened. I followed them. I recorded them. I watched them lie to my face every day. There was no hysteria in her voice. Just clarity. That made it more dangerous. Mark finally picked up the phone, swiping once, twice. Enough. He set it back down. What do you want? He asked. Her answer came without hesitation. Revenge. The word lingered between them, heavy, predictable. Mark exhaled slowly, almost amused. That's a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Her gaze sharpened. They humiliated us. No, Mark said calmly. They underestimated us. That hit differently. He could see it in the way her posture shifted just slightly. A recalculation. What's your name? He asked. Elena. He nodded once. Elena, he repeated. If you want revenge, you'll make a mistake. And if I don't act, she challenged. Mark picked up his glass, again swirling the bourbon. They'll make one. A silence followed. Longer this time, more dangerous. She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Or, we make sure they do. Mark met her eyes again. For the first time, something flickered beneath his calm. Not anger, not pain, strategy. And how he asked quietly, do you propose we do that? Her lips curved just slightly. Together. Mark held her gaze. Then slowly, he smiled. Not warmly, not kindly, but like a man who had just been handed the final piece of a puzzle he'd been solving in silence. Mark didn't change his routine. That was the first rule. If Clara suspected even a shift in his rhythm, the way he entered the apartment, the timing of his showers, the cadence of his questions, she would adjust. And Mark wasn't ready for her to adapt yet. He needed her exactly as she was, comfortable, careless, convinced she was still in control. The apartment on the Upper West Side was quiet when he returned that night. Too quiet. Clara was on the couch, legs folded beneath her laptop, open but untouched. The glow of the screen painted her face in soft blue light. She looked up as he entered, offering a smile that was almost perfect. Almost. "You're late," she said gently. Mark placed his keys in the same ceramic tray by the door, not a millimeter off. Meeting ran over. It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. She nodded, closing the laptop with a soft click. "You should have texted. I thought about it." A pause. She studied him for a fraction longer than usual. Not suspicion, just calibration. Clara was always reading people. It was part of what made her so good at her job, and so dangerous now. "Dinner?" she asked. "I already ate." Another small pause. Too small for most people to notice. But Mark wasn't most people. Clara smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. That night Mark lay beside her in bed, eyes open in the dark. Her breathing was steady, controlled, almost practiced. At 2:17 a.m., her phone lit up. Not a sound, just light. She didn't move immediately. 5 seconds, 10. Then carefully, so carefully, she shifted, just enough to reach for the phone without disturbing him. Mark kept his breathing slow, even, as if asleep. He watched through the reflection in the window. A message preview flashed across her screen. No name, just a single line, "Miss you already." Her thumb hovered for a moment before she typed a reply. Quick, familiar. She smiled, not the smile she gave Mark. This one was softer, real, and that told him everything he needed to know. The next morning, Clara was radiant. She moved through the kitchen with effortless grace, humming under her breath as she poured coffee. "You have court today?" she asked. Mark adjusted his cufflinks, watching her reflection in the stainless steel of the coffee machine. "No. Internal review." She nodded. "I have a client lunch. Might run late." "Of course you do," he said. The words were neutral, but something underneath them made her glance up. "What does that mean?" she asked lightly. Mark met her eyes. "It means you've been busy lately. A test. Small. Controlled." Clara tilted her head, her expression shifting, instantly defensive, but masked as confusion. "My job is busy, Mark. I know." "You sound like you don't believe me. I didn't say that." Another pause, this one sharper. Clara set her coffee down a little harder than necessary. "If you have something to say, just say it." There it was. The invitation to confrontation. Too early. Mark shook his head slightly, slipping on his jacket. Nothing to say. That unsettled her more than accusation ever could. Over the next 2 weeks, Mark watched. He didn't follow. He didn't confront. He observed. Patterns emerged. Clara's phone was never face up anymore. She took calls in the hallway, in the bathroom, once even on the fire escape. Her calendar was suddenly flexible. Meetings moved, canceled, rescheduled. And always, always there were gaps. Unaccounted time. Mark didn't ask about them. He filled them. A quiet installation in the apartment's security system. Not cameras, Clara would notice that, but access logs, entry timestamps, door activity. He synced it to his phone. Every entry, every exit, documented. At work, he requested financial reports tied to Daniel Hayes' accounts. Casually, professionally, no red flags. Daniel was sloppy. That was the first real surprise. Unusual transfers, private accounts, expense reports that didn't align with business travel. Mark didn't jump to conclusions. He built structure. Every piece of information went into a private file. Dates, times, locations, cross-referenced, layered, until it stopped being suspicion and became a timeline. One evening, Clara returned home earlier than expected. Mark was already there, seated at the dining table, reviewing documents. She froze just for a second. "You're home early," she said. "So are you." A beat. "I canceled my meeting." "Why?" She hesitated, then smiled. "Headache." Mark nodded slowly. Of course, she walked toward him, leaning down to kiss his cheek. Her perfume lingered. Different. Not the one she wore that morning. Mark didn't react, but he noted it, filed it away. Another detail in a growing pattern of truths she thought were invisible. That night, Clara tried harder. More attentive, more affectionate. She laughed more, touched him more, as if she could rebalance something that had quietly shifted. Mark let her. Every smile, every gesture, he accepted it all. Not as love, as data. 3 weeks after meeting Elena, Mark sat alone in his office, the city stretching endlessly beyond the glass. His laptop screen was filled with folders, photos, messages, financial records, entry logs, everything aligned, everything confirmed. There was no longer any doubt, only decisions. His phone buzzed. Elena. We need to move. Mark stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, not yet. A second later, her reply came. I'm done waiting. Mark leaned back in his chair, eyes cold, calculating. Then he typed one final message. Then you'll ruin everything. He set the phone down. Outside, the city moved on, unaware, indifferent. Inside, Mark Sullivan finally allowed himself to feel something. Not rage, not heartbreak, but clarity. The kind that came only when illusion was completely stripped away. He whispered to the empty room, they don't get to choose how this ends. Elena Hayes didn't wait for permission. This time, she chose the place deliberately, an upscale rooftop lounge in Midtown, the kind where power dressed itself in restraint and money spoke in low voices. Glass walls framed the skyline like a painting no one questioned the value of. Mark arrived exactly on time. She was already there. Of course she was. Elena stood by the railing, a single glass of champagne in her hand untouched. The wind played lightly with her hair, but everything else about her remained controlled, composed to the point of tension. You're late, she said without turning. I'm not, Mark replied. A small silence. Then she turned. Her eyes were different tonight. Sharper, tired, dangerous. I followed them, again she said. No greeting, no pretense. Mark stepped beside her, his gaze drifting out over the city lights, and her jaw tightened. They're not even careful anymore. He didn't respond. So she continued. A hotel on 47th. Same one, same room, I think. Her voice dipped, but didn't break. They laugh, Mark. They walk in like they own the world. Still nothing from him. That's what finally made her snap. How can you be this calm, she demanded, turning fully toward him. Do you understand what they're doing to us? Mark glanced at her. Not dismissive, not cold. Just precise. Yes. Then why aren't you doing anything I am? Her laugh was short, bitter. Watching isn't doing. It is, Mark said quietly. If you know what you're watching for. Elena stared at him, searching for something, weakness maybe, or proof that he was just another man trying to hide behind composure. She didn't find it. I don't want to observe anymore, she said. I want to end this. Mark took a slow breath. Define end. Her lips pressed together. I want them exposed, humiliated. I want them to feel exactly what we're feeling. There it was. Raw, honest, predictable. Mark nodded slightly. And then she frowned. What do you mean? After that, he said. After the explosion. After the confrontation. After the screaming and the apologies and the damage control. His voice remained even. What happens next? Elena hesitated. For the first time since he'd met her. She didn't have an answer. That's not the point, she said, but it lacked conviction. It is the only point, Mark replied. A breeze swept between them, carrying the distant hum of traffic far below. You're thinking too far ahead, she said. And you're not thinking far enough. Her eyes flashed. I was betrayed. So was I. Then act like it. Mark turned to face her fully now. I am. Silence stretched between them. Not empty tense. Measured. You want revenge? He continued. I want control. They're the same thing. No, Mark said. They only look the same to people who've already lost it. That hit. Harder than she expected. Elena's grip tightened around her glass, her knuckles whitening slightly. You think I've lost control? She asked, voice low. I think you're close, Mark said. Another pause. Then slowly, she exhaled. Not surrender. Adjustment. Then tell me what you would do, she said. Mark didn't answer immediately. He let the moment breathe. Let her sit in it. Then, we don't expose them, he said. Her eyes narrowed. What? Not yet. That's insane. No, he said calmly. It's timing. Elena shook her head, stepping away from him. They're getting away with it. For now. I'm not interested in for now. That's because you're thinking emotionally, and you're not thinking at all if you think I'm going to sit back while they're already making mistakes, Mark interrupted. She stopped. That caught her. What do you mean? Mark reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. A few taps. Then he turned the screen toward her. Financial records, transfers, dates, amounts. Her confusion was immediate. What is this Daniel Hayes, Mark said? Moving money? He shouldn't be moving. Her eyes scanned the screen. Her breathing slowing not from calm but from focus. This is illegal. Yes. She looked up at him. You're building a case? I'm building leverage. A shift. Subtle but undeniable. What does this have to do with Clara? She asked. Everything Mark said. People don't compartmentalize as well as they think they do. Affairs create patterns. Patterns create exposure. Elena studied him more carefully now. You've been doing this longer than you're admitting. Mark didn't deny it. How long, she asked. Long enough. Another silence. This one different. Less chaotic. More aligned. And where do I fit into this? She asked. Mark held her gaze. You already do. She frowned. How you see things. I don't, he said. You're closer to Daniel's movements, his habits, his carelessness. And in return, Mark didn't hesitate. You get what you want. Revenge. He shook his head slightly. Closure. She let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Those aren't the same thing. No, Mark said, but one lasts longer. Elena looked away back toward the skyline. For a long moment she said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, more dangerous. If I do this your way? She said, they don't get to walk away, do they? Mark's answer was immediate. No. She turned back to him. And you won't hesitate when the time comes a beat. Then no. That was enough. Not comforting, not reassuring, but certain. Elena stepped closer again, extending her hand. Not as a gesture of trust, as a contract. Then we do it your way, she said. Mark looked at her hand, then took it. Her grip was firm, cold, resolved. On one condition, she added. Mark raised an eyebrow slightly. If you lose control, she said, I finish it my way. A faint smile touched his lips. If I lose control, he said quietly, there won't be anything left for you to finish. For the first time, Elena smiled back. Not warmly, but knowingly. Two people, same betrayal, different philosophies. Now bound by a single objective, not chaos, not impulse, but something far more dangerous, precision. Later that night, Mark returned home to find Clara asleep, or pretending to be. He stood in the doorway for a moment watching her. Her face was peaceful, untouched by consequence. For now. He stepped inside quietly, loosening his tie. Did you have a good evening? She murmured, eyes still closed. Mark paused, then answered, productive. Her lips curved faintly. Good. She didn't ask anything else. Didn't need to. She still believed she was ahead of him. Mark turned off the light, the room falling into darkness. As he lay beside her, staring into the ceiling, one thought settled into place, clear, unshakable. This wasn't about catching them anymore. It was about deciding exactly how they would fall. The shift was subtle at first, so subtle that anyone else might have mistaken it for stress or distance or the natural erosion of routine that happens in long-term relationships. But Mark noticed, because he was looking for it. Clara had always been articulate, careful with words, strategic with tone. She understood how to guide a conversation, not by force, but by suggestion, by implication, by making the other person feel as though they had arrived at a conclusion entirely on their own. Now, she was using that skill on him. Do you ever feel like we've been drifting? Mark asked one evening, his voice neutral, almost reflective. They were seated across from each other at the dining table. Candlelight flickered between them, casting soft shadows across Clara's face. She didn't answer immediately. She smiled, not dismissively, not defensively, just gently. I think everyone feels that sometimes, she said. Life gets busy. Mark nodded slowly. Busy enough to forget each other. A pause. Then Clara tilted her head slightly, studying him. Where is this coming from? There it was. Not an answer, a redirection. Mark leaned back in his chair. I'm asking a question, and I'm trying to understand why she replied, her tone still calm but firmer now. You don't usually ask questions like that unless something's bothering you. Mark held her gaze. What if something is Clara's expression softened instantly? Concern, warmth, familiarity. A performance so seamless it would have been convincing if he hadn't already seen the version of her that smiled at someone else at 2:17 in the morning. Then talk to me, she said, reaching across the table, her fingers brushing his. Don't do this. Vague thing. Mark didn't pull away. But he didn't respond either. He let the silence stretch. Let her fill it. And she did. You've been distant too, Mark, she continued. You come home late. You don't tell me what's going on at work. You barely look at me some nights. A small, controlled breath. It's not just me. There it was again. Deflection. Shift the weight. Make it shared. Mark nodded slowly as if considering her words. That's fair, he said. She blinked. Just slightly. She hadn't expected agreement. Then maybe we both need to try harder, she said. Maybe, Mark replied. But his tone didn't change. And that unsettled her. The next test came 2 nights later. Clara was in the bedroom, her voice low as she spoke on the phone. Mark stood just outside the door, not close enough to be obvious, but close enough to hear tone, cadence, rhythm. I told you it's not that simple, she whispered. A pause, then softer. No. He doesn't know. Mark closed his eyes briefly, not in pain, in confirmation. He stepped into the room deliberately, not quietly, just enough for the floor to creak. Clara turned, instantly ending the call. Hey, she said too quickly. I was just talking to Jessica, Mark asked. She blinked, then smiled. Yeah. He nodded once. Of course. He walked past her, loosening his tie, his movements unhurried. Clara watched him carefully now, measuring, adjusting. You sound tired, she said. I am. You've been working too much. Probably. A beat. Then, who were you talking to? He asked casually, as if the thought had just occurred. Clara didn't hesitate. Jessica. Again. Consistent. Rehearsed. Mark turned to face her. Strange, he said. Her smile tightened. What is I ran into her yesterday? A flicker? There. Gone almost instantly. How she mentioned she hasn't talked to you in a week. Silence. A thin one, sharp at the edges. Clara let out a soft laugh. She must have forgotten. We text more than we call. Mark studied her. You said you were on the phone. Another pause. Shorter this time. She recovered faster. I meant earlier, she said smoothly. Before you came in. Effortless. Layered. Plausible. If you weren't paying attention. Mark nodded slowly. Of course you did. And just like that, he let it go. No accusation, no escalation, nothing for her to push against. That was what made it dangerous. Clara escalated after that. Not outwardly, internally. Her behavior sharpened, more attentive when he was present. More distant when she thought he wasn't watching. Her lies became cleaner, more structured, less emotional, which meant she was thinking harder. And thinking harder meant she was afraid. You're imagining things, she said one night, her voice steady but edged with something brittle. I don't know why you keep circling like this. Mark stood by the window, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the glass. I haven't accused you of anything. You don't have to, she replied. It's in the way you look at me. He turned. How do I look at you? Clara hesitated. That question forced her out of script. Like you're waiting for me to say something wrong. Mark considered that, then nodded. Maybe I am. Her breath caught. You see, she said quickly, this is exactly what I mean. You're creating a problem that doesn't exist. Is it? He asked calmly. Yes. No hesitation, no crack, just certainty. Mark stepped closer. Not aggressive, just present. Then help me understand, he said quietly. Why your phone is always face down. Clara's expression shifted instantly. Annoyance now. Defensive energy. Seriously, she said. That's what this is about. It's a question. It's paranoid. It's observant. She laughed sharper this time. You've been spending too much time in your own head, Mark. Maybe. You're looking for something that isn't there. Am I? Yes. Another silence. Thicker now. Charged. Clara crossed her arms. If you don't trust me, she said, just say it. Mark held her gaze. I trust what I can verify. That landed. Hard. She shook her head, stepping back. This is insane. Is it? Yes, she snapped. You're turning nothing into something. Mark didn't respond, didn't argue, didn't defend. He just watched her. And that broke the rhythm, because Clara was used to resistance, used to emotion, used to reactions she could shape, redirect, manipulate. But this quiet, steady, unyielding observation, it gave her nothing to hold on to. Later that night, she tried a different approach. Softer, more intimate. She curled against him in bed, her voice barely above a whisper. You're scaring me, she said. Mark stared at the ceiling. How, you're not you anymore? He turned his head slightly. And who am I? She hesitated. Then your diss isn't cold. Like you've already decided something without telling me. Mark studied her face in the dim light. There it was. Not just manipulation. Fear. Real this time. Subtle, but undeniable. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. A gentle gesture. Familiar. Maybe I'm just paying attention, he said. Her breath caught. What does that mean? Mark didn't answer. He turned away, closing his eyes, ending the conversation on his terms. Clara lay awake long after his breathing steadied. Her mind moved faster now, replaying every word, every look, every silence. Something had shifted. She could feel it, but she couldn't see it. And that was what terrified her most. Across the city, Elena sat in her car, staring at her phone. A message from Mark. Just one line. She's starting to feel it. Elena typed back instantly. Then we move. 3 dots appeared. Paused. Disappeared. Then soon. Back in the apartment, Mark opened his eyes in the dark. Fully awake, fully aware. The web was tightening, not around him, around her. And the more she struggled to control the narrative, the more clearly he could see the truth beneath it. By the time suspicion becomes certainty, most people break. Mark Sullivan. Refined. His office sat 32 floors above the city, a glass box of quiet authority. From the outside, it looked like power. From the inside, it functioned like control. Every file on his desk had a purpose. Every silence in his schedule had been carved out deliberately. And every move he made now had consequence. Walk me through it again. Daniel Hayes stood across from him. Jacket unbuttoned, confidence worn like armor. He hadn't noticed anything yet. Not the shift, not the distance. That was the beauty of precision. Quarterly discrepancies. Mark said calmly, flipping through a set of documents. Minor but consistent. Daniel waved a dismissive hand. Accounting noise. You know how it is. Mark looked up. I do. A beat. That's why I'm asking. Daniel smiled, stepping closer, lowering his voice as if they were sharing something confidential. Look, if this is about the Singapore transfers, Mark didn't react. Didn't interrupt. He just listened. And that was enough. Because people always reveal more when they think they're explaining less. It's temporary positioning, Daniel continued. Tax optimization. Nothing that isn't adjustable. Adjustable. Mark noted the word. Filed it away. Of course, Mark said. Daniel studied him for a moment. You're not worried, are you? Mark closed the folder slowly. No. And that was the truth. He wasn't worried. He was building. The evidence didn't come all at once. It layered, like architecture. Access logs from the apartment. Time-stamped entries when Clara claimed she was at dinner with clients working late. Correlated with hotel bookings under Daniel's shell accounts. Same nights, same hours, same lies. Email fragments recovered through legal access channels. Nothing explicit. But enough. Patterns of communication masked as business correspondence. Attachments that didn't belong. Language that crossed a line only 2 people pretending not to cross it would use. And then, the footage. Mark didn't install cameras in his home. He didn't need to. The hotel had already done that for him. Lobby recordings, elevator feeds, time-stamped, legally obtainable through a corporate compliance inquiry tied to Daniel's financial investigation. A technicality. A loophole. A doorway. Mark sat alone in his office late one night, the city reduced to scattered light beyond the glass. He pressed play. Clara entered first. Confident? Unhurried? She checked her phone once, then stepped toward the elevator. 30 seconds later, Daniel. Closer than necessary. Familiar. Too familiar. They didn't touch. Not yet. They didn't need to. Because the space between them already said everything. Mark paused the footage. Not out of pain. Out of completion. There it was. Not suspicion, not theory. Truth, undeniable, documented, structured, admissible. His phone buzzed. Elena. I followed them again tonight. Mark didn't respond immediately. Instead, he opened another file. A draft, not of a message, of a case. Hayes versus Internal Compliance Review, subject. Financial misconduct and fiduciary breach, clean. Clinical, devastating. Every transaction Daniel thought was hidden now mapped into a narrative that could dismantle his career in a single proceeding. But Mark wasn't finished, because financial ruin was only half the equation. He finally replied, "Stop following them." The response came instantly. "Excuse me," Mark typed slowly. "You're too close. You'll make a mistake." 3 dots, gone. "Then I want to see it." Mark stared at the screen. Then typed, "You will." 2 days later, they met again. This time no rooftop, no skyline, just a private conference room in Mark's firm. Controlled, isolated, silent, Elena sat across from him, her posture rigid, her patience visibly worn thin. "You said you had something," she said. Mark slid a tablet across the table. "No commentary," he said. "Just watch." She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then pressed play. The footage unfolded, frame by frame, step by step. Clara, Daniel, together, unmistakable now, no distance, no ambiguity, no room for denial. Elena didn't speak, didn't move, didn't breathe, until it ended. The screen went black, and in that reflection, she saw herself, still, silent, shattered. "That's enough," she whispered. But her voice wasn't broken. It was hollow. Mark studied her carefully. "Is it?" She looked up at him. Eyes burning now, not with chaos but with something colder. "They don't even hide it," she said. "No. They walk into it like it's normal." "Yes." Her jaw tightened. "I want them destroyed." Mark leaned back slightly. "You want them exposed. I want them to suffer. They will." Her eyes locked onto his. When Mark reached for the tablet, turning it off completely. "When it matters. That's not an answer. It's the only one that works." She stood abruptly, pacing once across the room. "This is torture," she said. "Watching, waiting, knowing is control." Mark finished. She stopped, turned. "You keep saying that like it makes it easier." "It doesn't," he said calmly. "It makes it effective." Silence. Heavy, measured. Then, "What's the plan?" she asked. Mark folded his hands on the table. "A legal conference, 2 weeks from now." She frowned. "What does that have to do with anything? Daniel will be there," Mark said. "Panel speaker. High visibility. And Clara. She'll attend." "How do you know?" Mark held her gaze. "Because she always does." That landed. Elena exhaled slowly. And then what Mark didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened a final file. This one, different. Photos, messages, logs, everything compiled, organized, unbreakable. "We don't confront them privately," he said. Elena's expression shifted. Realization. "You're going to do it there?" "Yes." "In front of everyone?" "Yes." A long pause. Then, "That's not revenge," she said quietly. Mark's eyes didn't waver. "No," he said. "It's consequence." Back home that night, Clara was waiting. Dressed differently. Softer, warmer, intentional. "You've been distant," she said gently. Mark set his keys down. "I've been busy." She stepped closer. "You don't talk to me anymore." He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, there was no emotion behind it, only recognition. "I've been listening," he said. Her brow furrowed. To what? Mark stepped past her, loosening his tie. "To everything you're not saying." Silence. Sharp, unforgiving. Clara turned slowly. "What is that supposed to mean?" Mark paused at the doorway. Then, without looking back, "You'll understand soon." That night, Clara didn't sleep. And for the first time since it began, neither did Mark. Not because he was conflicted, but because the plan was complete. Every variable accounted for. Every outcome anticipated. Every truth ready. 2 weeks. That's all it would take. For everything Clara believed she controlled to disappear. The first crack didn't come from confrontation. It came from silence. Clara had always thrived in control of conversations, of appearances of perception. She knew how to steer tension before it became conflict, how to soften suspicion before it hardened into truth. But now, there was nothing to steer. because Mark had stopped reacting. Are you even listening to me? Her voice cut through the kitchen sharper than she intended. Mark didn't look up immediately. He finished scrolling through the document on his tablet, then set it down with quiet precision. Yes, then say something. I am, he replied calmly, by listening. That answer, measured neutral, felt like rejection. Clara exhaled sharply, turning away, then back again. Her movements were quicker now, less controlled. You've been like this for weeks, she said, distant, cold, like I'm invisible. Mark studied her, not unkindly, but without softness. You're not invisible. Then what am I? Pause. Long enough to matter. Unclear, he said. That word landed heavier than accusation ever could. Clara blinked. What does that even mean? It means Mark continued his tone. Even I don't recognize the pattern anymore. Her chest rose, then fell. That's not my fault. I didn't say it was. You're implying it. I'm observing it. The distinction frustrated her, because it gave her nothing to fight. Clara turned away, again gripping the edge of the counter. You're doing this on purpose, she said, quieter now. Doing what? Making me feel like I've done something wrong. Mark didn't answer immediately, because the truth was she had, but saying it now would ruin everything. I'm asking questions, he said instead. No. Clara snapped, turning back. You're circling. You're watching me. Mark held her gaze. Yes. That honesty caught her off guard. A flicker of panic, quick but real. Why, she asked. Because something changed. Her throat tightened. Things change, Mark. That's life, not like this. Silence, thicker now, more dangerous. Clara crossed her arms, defensive instinct rising fast. You're overthinking, she said. You always do this when work gets intense. Mark nodded slightly. That's convenient. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means, he said, every explanation you give protects the same outcome. And what outcome is that? That nothing is wrong. Her breath caught. Because nothing is wrong. The conviction in her voice was immediate. Too immediate. Mark didn't argue. He simply watched her, and that unraveled her more than any accusation. That night, Clara made a mistake. A small one, but Mark had been waiting for small mistakes. I have a late client dinner, she said, avoiding his eyes as she slipped on her heels. Mark adjusted his watch. Where downtown? Which restaurant? A pause. Brief, but fatal. I don't remember the name, she said quickly. It's new. Mark nodded. Of course. He didn't press further. Didn't need to. Because 30 minutes later his phone vibrated. Access log entry 7. 42 p.m. Exit. 7:58 p.m. Clara had come back. Left again, changed something. Mark didn't check immediately. He waited. Patience wasn't passive. It was strategic. At 9:13 p.m., another notification. Elena, they're at the hotel. A photo followed. Blurry. Distant. But clear enough. Clara. Daniel. Walking side by side. Mark stared at the image for a long moment. Not with anger, not with pain, but with something colder. Completion. He replied, Stop. 3 seconds. Then I'm outside their room. Mark's jaw tightened slightly. That was new. That was dangerous. He called her. She picked up on the first ring. I can hear them, Elena whispered, laughing, like it's nothing. Leave. No. That's not a suggestion. I want them to know. I know. And then what Mark asked, his voice still calm but firmer now. You knock on the door. You scream. You cry. Silence. Breathing. Unsteady. They deserve it, she said. They deserve consequences, Mark corrected. Not chaos. I don't care about your plan right now. You will, he said, if you want it to work. Another pause. Longer. He could feel her slipping. And if she slipped, everything unraveled. Elena, he said quietly, listen to me. Her breathing slowed slightly. You're not powerless, he continued. You're early. That landed, not comfort, but structure. If you walk away now, he said, they still think they're safe. And if I don't, they adjust. Silence again. Then a door closing in the background. Footsteps. Movement. I'm leaving, she said. Mark exhaled slowly. Good. But this ends soon, she added. I'm done waiting. Mark's answer came without hesitation. It already has. Back at the apartment, Clara returned just after midnight. Her movements were quieter now, more careful. She slipped off her heels by the door, glancing toward the bedroom. Mark was sitting in the dark, waiting, not in anger, in stillness. She froze. "Why are you sitting there?" she asked, her voice tight. "I couldn't sleep." A lie, but a necessary one. She stepped inside slowly. "You should have texted. I would have come home earlier." Mark tilted his head slightly. "Would you—" The question was soft, but it cut. Clara's expression flickered. "I was working," she said. "Of course you were." He stood walking past her, not touching, not stopping, just close enough for her to feel the absence of everything that used to be there. "Mark," she said, turning quickly, "what is going on with you?" He paused, back still to her. "Then I'm just trying to understand something." Her chest tightened. What Mark turned slightly just enough for her to see his profile in the dark. "How long someone can lie," he said quietly before they start believing it themselves. Silence. Absolute. Clara's throat moved as she swallowed. "I don't know what you're talking about." Mark nodded once. "I know." And that was worse. Because he didn't push, didn't accuse, didn't expose. He just knew. That night Clara lay awake, her mind racing faster than she could control. Every word, every look, every silence. Something was wrong. Not with him, with the space between them, with the version of reality she had been maintaining. It was slipping, and she couldn't stop it. Across the city, Elena sat alone in her apartment staring at the photo she had taken. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Delete, send, expose, end it. Her jaw tightened. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Mark. 2 days. She stared at it, then typed, "It better be worth it." The reply came instantly. "It will be final." Back in the dark, Mark stood by the window, the city stretching endlessly before him. Everything was aligned, every variable accounted for, every emotion contained. He didn't feel rage, he didn't feel grief. He felt something far more dangerous: certainty. Because in 48 hours, Clara wouldn't be guessing anymore. She would know exactly when she lost control. The ballroom was designed for authority. High ceilings, polished marble floors, rows of tailored suits and measured voices. The kind of place where reputations were built carefully and destroyed even more carefully. The annual legal conference was less about law and more about power. And today power was about to shift. Mark stood near the edge of the room, adjusting his cufflinks with quiet precision. Everything about him looked the same. Same posture, same calm, same unreadable expression. But beneath that stillness, every detail had already been set in motion. Across the room, Clara entered. She was breathtaking. Effortless elegance wrapped in confidence, her presence drawing attention without demanding it. She scanned the room instinctively, reading faces, measuring perception. Then her eyes found Mark. For a moment, relief flickered. He was here, normal, predictable, still within reach. She walked toward him, her smile carefully composed. "You didn't tell me you'd be speaking today," she said lightly. Mark met her gaze. I didn't think it mattered. A pause. Something in his tone, too flat, too controlled, made her stomach tighten. "It does," she said. "It's important. Everything today's important," he replied. That answer didn't comfort her. It sharpened something she couldn't name. Mark Daniel's voice cut through the space as he approached, confident as ever, his presence loud in ways Mark's never needed to be. "Ready for your big moment?" Daniel grinned, clapping a hand on Mark's shoulder. Mark didn't react to the touch. "Always." Daniel laughed. "That's what I like about you, steady under pressure." Mark held his gaze. "Yes," he said. "Pressure reveals things." For a split second, Daniel hesitated, then brushed it off. "Looking forward to your presentation," he said. "You should," Mark replied. Elena stood at the back of the room, unnoticed, uninvited, unforgiving. Her eyes never left Clara, or Daniel, or the space between them that now felt like a ticking clock. The conference began as expected. Speeches, applause, polished arguments delivered with practiced confidence, until Mark's name was called. He walked to the stage without hesitation. No notes in his hand, no uncertainty in his step, just control. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice steady, carrying effortlessly through the room. "I'd like to discuss a case study in fiduciary responsibility, and the consequences of failing it. Standard, expected, safe." For now. Daniel leaned back in his seat, bowed relaxed. Clara sat beside him, posture perfect, but her fingers just slightly tense against her lap. Something wasn't right. She could feel it now. Not in what Mark was saying, but in how he was saying it. Over the past several months, Mark continued, we've conducted an internal review of financial activities within our firm. A shift. Subtle, but real. Daniel's smile faded slightly. What we found, Mark said, was not error, but intent. The room grew quieter. Mark turned, gesturing toward the screen behind him. A slide appeared. Clean, precise, devastating. Transaction logs, account transfers, hidden allocations. Daniel sat forward, now alert, now focused, now aware. These transactions, Mark said, were systematically concealed through layered accounts and misrepresented reporting structures. His gaze moved slowly, deliberately, until it landed on Daniel. And they lead back to a single individual. Silence. Heavy, anticipating. Daniel forced a small laugh, shaking his head slightly, as if dismissing the implication before it fully formed. Mark Daniel Hayes, Mark said. No hesitation, no escalation, just truth. The room froze. Clara's breath caught. Not in shock and recognition. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. This was planned. Daniel stood abruptly. This is ridiculous, he said, his voice sharp but controlled. You're presenting internal data out of context. Am I? Mark asked calmly. Another slide. Emails. Authorization chains. Signatures. Daniel's name. Everywhere. You can't just... Mark interrupted, still calm. Because it's verified. Daniel's composure cracked. Not fully, but enough. This is a misunderstanding, he said, turning slightly toward the audience now. A misinterpretation of intent, Mark repeated. Not error. Murmurs spread through the room. Phones lifted, eyes sharpened. Reputations, shifting in real time. Clara's pulse pounded in her ears. Her gaze snapped to Mark. He wasn't looking at Daniel anymore. He was looking at her. And in that moment, she understood. Not everything, but enough. Financial misconduct, Mark continued, is often accompanied by other lapses in judgment. A pause, just long enough. Daniel frowned. What are you doing? Mark didn't answer him. He pressed the remote. The screen changed. Security footage, grainy, time-stamped, unmistakable. Clara stood frozen, Daniel beside her, entering the hotel, together. The room erupted, not loudly, but sharply. Whispers, reactions, recognition. No, Clara whispered under her breath. Not denial, not yet, just disbelief. Daniel turned toward Mark, his voice dropping. You've lost your mind. Mark met his eyes. No, he said quietly. I found it. More images, more timestamps, more proof. Layered, structured, impossible to refute. Clara stood slowly, her legs unsteady now. Mark, she said, her voice barely holding together. What is this? He looked at her. Finally. Fully. This, he said, is clarity. Her head shook instinctively. No, this isn't what it looks like. The first offense, automatic, desperate. It's not, she continued, her voice rising slightly. These are taken out of context. You don't understand. I understand completely, Mark said, still calm, still controlled. That calmness shattered her more than anger ever could. It didn't mean anything, she said quickly. It was a mistake. 6 months, Mark asked. Her voice caught. I repeatedly, he added. Silence. The room watched, listened, judged. Daniel stepped in, trying to regain control. This is personal, he snapped. This has nothing to do with it. Has everything to do with it, Mark said. Integrity doesn't separate itself when it's inconvenient. Clara's composure broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but visibly. Her breathing uneven, her eyes glassy, her control gone. Mark, please, she said, stepping toward him. Not here. Not like this. He didn't move. Where would you prefer? He asked quietly. Somewhere more comfortable for the lie that landed. Hard, final. I was going to tell you, she said, grasping at something, anything. I didn't know how. Mark tilted his head slightly. That's not true. Her chest tightened. You weren't going to tell me, he continued. You were going to manage me. Silence. Absolute. Tears formed but didn't fall. Not yet. Because even now, part of her was still trying to hold on, to salvage something, anything. This isn't who I am, she whispered. Mark's gaze didn't soften. It is, he said. You just didn't think I'd see it. Behind them, the room had already shifted. Phones out, messages sent, careers unraveling in real time. Daniel said nothing now, because there was nothing left to say. Clara stood in the center of it all, exposed, not just for what she did, but for every lie she told to protect it. Mark stepped back slightly, creating distance, physical, final. I'm not here to destroy you, he said. Her eyes lifted, fragile, searching. Then why, she asked. His answer came without hesitation. So you understand exactly what you chose. And in that moment she did. Not partially, not defensively, but completely. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was judgment. And it would follow her, long after this room forgot her name. Mark turned, walked off the stage. Not rushed, not shaken, just finished. Elena watched from the back, still, quiet, satisfied, but not smiling. Because this wasn't revenge, it was something colder, something cleaner, something that didn't need emotion to be complete. Behind them, Clara finally broke. Not in screams, not in collapse, but in the quiet, irreversible realization that everything she had built was gone, and there was nothing left to control. The silence after destruction is never quiet. It hums, low, constant, inescapable. By the time Mark stepped out of the conference hall, the damage had already begun to spread. Phones vibrated. Conversations fractured. Names were being repeated not with admiration, but with caution. Daniel Hayes was finished. That part was immediate, predictable, contained. Clara was different. Her collapse wouldn't be loud. It would be slow. Public in ways that couldn't be controlled, and private in ways that would hurt more. Mark. Her voice found him before she did. Fragile, unsteady, unfamiliar. He stopped, but didn't turn immediately. He gave her the space to reach him. Not out of kindness, out of finality. When he faced her, she was no longer the woman who had walked into the ballroom hours earlier. Her composure was gone. Not completely, but enough. Her eyes were red, her breathing uneven, her posture no longer curated for perception. She looked human, and that was the most honest she had been in months. Please, she said, stepping closer. Just talk to me. Mark studied her. Not cold, not cruel, just finished. We're talking. Her lips trembled slightly. No, not like this. Not like a stranger. A pause. Then was what would you prefer? He asked quietly. Like before. That question cut deeper than anger ever could. I made a mistake, she said quickly. I know that. I know how it looks, but you have to understand. Then explain it, Mark said. Direct, unfiltered, exactly what she had avoided for months. Clara's breath caught, because explanation required truth, and truth required detail. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said. It started small. Conversations, work. He understood things you didn't. Mark didn't react. But something in the stillness changed. Not pain, recognition. So it's my fault, he said. No, that's not what I meant, she rushed. I'm just saying, we were already distant. You were always working, always somewhere else, and you filled the space. Mark finished. Her voice broke. Yes, the honesty landed. Too late. How many times, he asked. She froze. Mark, how many times, Clara? Her silence answered for her. But he didn't let it. I want the number. Her eyes shut tightly, as if that could stop the moment from existing. I don't know. That was worse than any number. Mark nodded slowly. Of course you don't. I wasn't counting, she whispered. I was, he said. Her eyes opened. Fear. Real now. I know where he continued. I know when. I know how long. Each word stripped something away. Control? Defense? Illusion? Then why are you asking me? She said, her voice cracking. Because I wanted to hear if you could tell the truth, he replied. A beat. You still can't. Tears fell now. Uncontrolled, unfiltered. I'm trying, she said. I don't know how to fix this. Mark's gaze didn't soften, because this wasn't about repair anymore. Fixing it would have required you to stop, he said. You didn't. I can stop now. No, Mark said gently. You can't undo. She stepped closer, desperation overriding everything else. Please, she whispered. We can go to therapy. We can start over. I'll cut him off completely. I already have. I'll do anything. Anything. The word echoed between them, heavy, empty. Mark studied her for a long moment, not searching, confirming. You're not asking for forgiveness, he said quietly. Her breath caught. Yes, I am. No, he interrupted. You're asking for relief. Silence. Sharp. Unavoidable. You don't want to lose this life, he continued. The stability. The image. Me too. Her tears fell harder now. I don't want to lose you. Mark held her gaze. You already did. That was the moment something inside her broke completely. Not the panic, not the fear, the understanding. I didn't think you'd ever leave, she said, her voice hollow. Mark nodded once. I know. That truth was heavier than betrayal, because it explained everything. I was going to tell you, she whispered again, weaker now. No, Mark said. You were going to continue. She shook her head, but there was no conviction left in it. I was confused. You were comfortable. I was lonely. You were dishonest. Each response calm, precise, left no room to hide, no room to twist, no room to escape. Clara's shoulders slumped, her voice barely audible now. I ruined everything. Mark didn't answer immediately. Then yet, no cruelty, no emphasis, just truth. She covered her face, her body folding inward as the weight of it finally settled. Not just what she had done, but what it had cost. My career? She whispered. My reputation? Everything. Mark watched her. And for the first time, there was something like sympathy, not enough to change anything, but enough to acknowledge the fall. There are consequences, he said. That's how reality works. She looked up at him broken. And us, a pause. Longer this time, because this was the only part that had ever mattered. There is no us, Mark said. The finality in his voice didn't echo. It settled, permanent. Clara nodded slowly. Not because she accepted it, but because she finally understood it couldn't be changed. I never thought you'd be this cold, she said weakly. Mark considered that, then shook his head. This isn't cold, he said. This is controlled. A silence followed. Not tense, not uncertain. Just complete. Mark stepped back. Not abruptly, not dramatically, just enough. I'm not angry, he said. She looked at him confused through tears. Then what are you? Mark held her gaze one last time. Done. And that was the difference. Anger could be negotiated. Pain could be softened. But done was absolute. He turned. And this time he didn't stop. Clara didn't follow, didn't call out again, because something deep inside her knew there was no version of this where he turned back. The hallway stretched long and quiet as Mark walked away. Each step steady, unhurried, unburdened. Behind him, a life collapsed. In front of him, nothing was certain, but everything was his again. Outside, the city moved as it always did, indifferent, unchanged. Mark paused at the edge of the street, the noise of traffic rising around him. For a moment, he stood still, not reflecting, not regretting, just present. Then he reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. A message waited. Elena. Is it over? Mark looked back once, not at Clara, not at the building, but at the version of himself that had walked in days ago, still questioning, still holding on. Then he typed yes. A pause, then another message appeared. How does it feel? Mark didn't answer immediately. He watched the city for a moment longer, then typed quiet. He put the phone away, stepped forward, and disappeared into the crowd, not as a man who had lost everything, but as one who had chosen exactly what to keep.